send out the agenda, so I'm just going to share it on the screen.
Okay, you
That's
guys
fine.
are live.
Okay, perfect. And pull up the agenda, and we'll get started. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's Governance and Policy Committee meeting. Today is March 9th. We were supposed to start at 6:30. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're here now. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:44 p.m. Change that. Today's attendees are going to be myself, Terry Williams, trustee, Laser Alert providing technology support and live streaming. It looks like Dr. Chase is not here, so I'm going to move her attendance just to absent for now. And if she has a moment to join, she will, and we'll move that again. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom, as we have been for the past year and change, I think, at this point. And I'm not going to repeat that. Everyone's, I think, gotten used to us saying all that. It will be recorded and transcribed. So the first thing, the meeting agenda, the first thing I want to do is review and adopt our last Governance and Policy Committee meeting minutes. So let me go ahead and pull that up first. Okay, so our last Governance and Policy Committee meeting took place on January 12th. We had one scheduled for February, but we had to cancel that meeting so another special meeting could take up that time slot. So during our last meeting on January 12th, the attendees were myself, Tracy Mayers, trustee Terry Williams, Laser Alert, again, for live streaming and technology support. Dr. Chase was unable to make it. That meeting was held virtually through Zoom. We called the meeting to order at 6:43 p.m. We went ahead and reviewed the previous committee meeting minutes, and we approved them as they were written. We then went ahead and discussed the committee charge, and we had already kind of agreed to the governance committee section of the charge. What we did not have agreement on at the time was a policy specific charges that we could add, since in the past, the governance committee has only been a governance committee. It wasn't that melded version we have now where it's governance and policy. So Tracy Mayers was supposed to present to the committee at the next meeting. Item number 2, the new board member manual. The committee met that day and spent significant time discussing changes and updates submitted by the committee members for recommendation. And that discussion concluded at 9:03 p.m. with the recommendation to be approving of the manual. Item number 3, the board evaluation. Terry Williams has suggested using a meeting evaluation tool post meetings. He agreed to review and update the tool and then present it to the committee for consideration. And the action item there is in the future meeting, Terry Williams would present to the committee. Number 4, the board retreat. I had inquired as to retreat topics and suggestions. Long and short, between the committee members, we kind of settled on a team building type exercise with no district business being discussed. So it would be strictly a board retreat. We had agreed at that time to begin the process and tried to schedule something in February. And I was supposed to follow up with the board president to begin that process. Item number 5, the Board of Education tone. I had just revisited the idea of just discussing, our behavior during meetings. And I had inquired with the committee memberships if they had anything to comment on. Terry Williams had stated that he had proposed a mechanism to limit discussion, but the mechanism was a little bit limited at the time. Trustee Mayer stated that reviewing the board norms are helpful for everyone. And then we kind of settled on that we would ask everyone to ensure that they adhere to the already existing board norms that we have in place, with a recommendation being asking the president to remind everyone of the board norms prior to the meeting. Item number 6, under new business. Tracy Mayers had no new business. Terry Williams revisited the board norms and asked if we would eliminate number 8 and make number 9 a figure of 5 minutes. And then we had some discussion on how would we actually enforce those 5 minutes, who's going to be timing it. And then we kind of suggested that, maybe trustees time themselves, since obviously the president's handling a whole bunch of other things at the same time. It's a little impractical for the president to time that. And then I had suggested that we think about it some more and then see if we come back to that. We adjourned that meeting at 9:24 p.m. Terry, any difference in your recollection of those meeting minutes, or are we good to approve them?
We are good to approve them.
Awesome.
I concur.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and pull up tonight's agenda. Again, we'll share that again. All right, share screen. Okay, perfect. Let me zoom in here because I just realized I got the zoomed all the way out and it may not be as easily visible on Zoom. All right, so we just went ahead and reviewed and adopted our last governance and policy committee meeting minutes. So we will move on to item number 2, which was developing a committee charge. So continuation of what we had talked about last meeting. Tracy Mayers had agreed to find policy-specific charges to add. There is a new development. Tracy Mayers has officially withdrawn from the governance and policy committee. So obviously she wasn't gonna move forward with finding those policy-specific charges. So I went ahead and just did some quick research and found a little bit of a snippet that we can use as a starting point, and I put it here below so we can discuss it. And this is a little bit, it's not gonna be necessarily, I think, what we're gonna end up adopting, because this policy committee charge that I found was for a sole policy committee, right? It was not a combination. It was not like a hybrid, what we did together. And it was a little more along the lines of, I guess, reviewing and approving every single policy. And I don't think that's what we had kind of agreed to based on previous conversations, including last year. So I just grabbed it, face value the way it was. And I figured we'll chop it up tonight and see what makes a little more sense. And then hopefully combine that with the governance piece. And then if we come to some kind of semblance in a future meeting, we could recommend it to the BOE and see if they're willing to go ahead and adopt that. So let me just read the statements here that I found. So it says the role of the policy committee is to oversee the review of policies adopted by the school board and ensure they are in accordance with federal and state mandates and informed by the New York State School Board Association, or NYSBA. I think it probably makes sense if we go through these one bullet point at a time, because each one of these can have a lot of meat to them. So what do you think of that first one, Terry?
I'm okay with that one. Let me just take another quick look at it again.
Sure.
School board. Yeah, I can't see a problem with that. That's
Okay, perfect. So we'll go on to the second one, which is establish priorities in policy review and adoption in consultation with the superintendent and the administration.
Yeah, that's a layup for me as well. I mean, that's how we've been doing it. That sounds like the best practice, certainly.
Okay. The next item, the next piece of it was set goals and schedules for policy review and adoption.
Yeah, certainly the schedule as we have it now is pretty much managed by the board clerk because in conjunction with the lawyers, because as it is now, policy changes obviously can come from a bunch of places, but more often than not, they come either from the state or as a suggestion from any number of organizations in the BOCES in Erie County, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, often makes these policy changes, which are very good, and they go usually to the clerk who manages the schedule for this. I'm just trying to think, and as far as I think the only other thing that we could add here somehow is if board members feel that policies should be reviewed periodically, how that would happen, because obviously we can do that as well. So that's the only part of the time frame I'm a little at a loss about, because any board member at any time can suggest a policy review of something, and then we can go through the process. So I don't know. I don't know if we need to have a formal schedule here.
Okay.
What do you think about?
Yeah, when I looked it up, I had some of those initial concerns that you had, but I also thought of it from to your earlier point. What resonated with me a lot was, I think that from what I've seen in the short time I've been on the board, there tend to be a few policies that it looks like Erie is always reviewing and always renewing. They reoccur pretty quickly, and then there tend to be some policies that I've seen that they just kind of sit there. They don't get touched very often. I guess they just don't need to be modified that much. And I was wondering if there was a way to kind of fold the review in for those that don't frequently get looked at. Maybe not on an annual basis, because there's so many policies, I think it would be overwhelming that committee. But the idea being that, at least every few years, we should probably look at them, because there may be something that we feel as a committee has changed that warrants a modification. So that I was thinking along those lines, but I wasn't sure, what's the right time frame, and maybe if there's only specific policies we consider to review.
Right. Well, you know what? I recall that I'm looking at my other computer here to call up the policies, and I recall during one of our earlier meetings this year. Oh, now this old computer, it loses connection, so I got to reboot it. But I recall that one of our earlier meetings that we spoke about reviewing the board section of the policies. As you know, the policies are broken up into different categories, and right off the top of my head, I don't recall what they are, but there's some that are just specific to us, just Greenburgh Central School District. And then there are some that are state policies that are driven by things at a higher level. And then there's some other set of policies. And those policies, the state policies and that other set, those are the ones that tend to get driven by, external organizations. And the ones over which we have control, the board policies, perhaps we can as a committee review those on a rolling basis, and make just review them, and if we see something that needs updating or further discussion, we make a recommendation or we ask to put it on the agenda of a work session, and then we have that discussion, and we do that maybe every meeting, but we don't do all of the policies. We do, like, and I'm calling them up now, you do policies, A through D, or maybe that's even too ambitious, A through C. And then the next meeting we do, D through F, so forth and so on a rolling basis. And, maybe that's a thought.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good one. So then so I added in what you just mentioned, right? So it would be a board policy specifically. And then maybe the schedule would be maybe annual schedule, right? To work our way through that. So with the idea being, we have typically 8-9 meetings of a committee in a school year,
right,
give or take. So then that would give us 8 or 9 meetings to chop up those policies and go through them.
Right. And I got my computer back up. Hold on for a second. Policy. Okay, so right. So we have our bylaws, which are the ones that I think I'm talking about, and those are listed as 1,000 through 1,650. And then we have internal operations, which is also clearly under our purview. Those are 2,000 through 2340. Community relations, 3,000 through 3510. Again, clearly hours. Administration, that's clearly hours as well. And some, obviously, all of these are in conjunction with the superintendent and the administration. That's 4,000 through 4410. Non-instructional business operations. This is starting to get pretty
verbose.
Yeah. Because these are now when you get to the 5,000 ones, these are the ones. I mean, obviously we approve all policies, but these are the ones that almost require the administration to take the lead on and then come back to us. So for instance, I'll just take this one as an example. School tax exemptions, right? 5240. This is one that gets updated by somebody in the business office, for any, they could have gotten something from the state or something from Erie One BOCES, and then it runs it by us. But I don't know if we want to take the lead on this. So for instance, it says, and I'm literally cherry picking here. No exemption shall be granted if the income of the owner or the combined income of the owners of property exceeds $37,399 for the income tax year. How they came up with that number, I have no idea. But at the same time, even as I read that, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that number needs to be contextualized. Is that a good number? Does it work in our favor? Or is it a good number or a bad number? Does it work in our favor or is it unfavorable to us? So, well, as an aside, Ashley, without getting too far off course, quite frankly, this is the kind of thing that, all of these policies, I think, can kind of be divided to come under the purview of existing board committees. So this one about school tax exemptions, this is clearly something that could be driven by the finance committee working with the representative, whether it's the treasurer or the assistant superintendent for business. So I guess what I'm saying is all of these some of these policies are clearly governance related, and we should be responsible for them. But do we want to say to our colleagues that other policies should be driven by or should be done in conjunction with the administration? Should they be looking at these policies at every meeting, reviewing them? Because obviously we can't do it as a committee. No committee can really go through all of these, but certainly if we have these committees that are charged with taking, having jurisdiction, if you will, over these areas, they could themselves review them and make recommendations. Did that make sense, what I said?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And that actually is the next bullet point. It actually says review recommended board action on policies not specifically in the purview of another school board committee.
Got it. Okay.
Which I think that's hitting the nail on the head, exactly what you were talking about, right? Because then it becomes this whole cross-pollination thing and who's in charge of what. And so I think the previous point is really just setting that schedule to ensure that annually someone's reviewing them, right?
Right.
And then to your earlier point, the governance and policy committee would be the one with ensuring that someone is reviewing it on some kind of schedule, yes, as well as looking at the board specific ones, the ones that you mentioned. I actually typed them up real quick as you mentioned them. So it was board bylaws, internal operations, community relations, and administration. Those would more or less fall under the the governance and policy committee.
Mhm.
And then it sounds like everything else would more or less fall to the other committees in some
Right.
shape or form.
Right.
So I think that's the combination, right?
Right. 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 Yes. Yes.
All right, perfect. And then the next one says evaluate suggestions for school board policy and recommend development of policies for adoption. So this one, when I read it, my first gut to this one was it makes sense, but I was trying to figure out how to walk the line, right? Because to your earlier point, depending on let's set aside the policies that are coming from some legislative or some change because of that. A lot of the times we're looking towards administration to recommend the what changes need to be made to the policy, right? So I was trying to figure out how do you meld this this current bullet point with that, right? Because there's a fine line there between the two.
Yeah. Well, certainly the administration, they just in their roles, they're going to find out information that they bring to us, and that may require a policy change. So that's what happens now, and that should continue. Evaluate for school board policy recommend. I think with us, I think the way we meld this is, and I don't have any examples here, either through the review or maybe through somebody just having an idea about something. Again, they had that initial conversation within their committee. It bubbles up. They work with the administration to articulate or formulate a recommendation, and then they make that recommendation to the full board. I don't see it necessarily as I see it as two separate avenues to come together to make a recommendation to the full board. Certainly, I mean, I think the fact is most board members probably won't have a lot of policy recommendations, in a year, primarily because there's so many that are already taken care of. And number two, we're not the experts here. But then there's some things that, do come up and probably do warrant a policy. And I think with the vetting, between vetting it with our attorneys and the administration, I see this as just another way that something could come to a recommendation to the board, and I don't see it necessarily as something that is, that needs melding. It's just different ways to come up with policies.
Got it. So if I can restate that just to make sure I got it. So it sounds like what you're saying is this wouldn't obviously interfere with any of the existing processes we have. This would be the scenario of I wake up tomorrow and I have this idea and I'm like, you know what? I think we should modify policy 1110, and we should add a line that says, we all get ice cream before, we all buy each other ice cream before our meeting, and that's our policy going forward. And so that's what this is talking to in your mind.
Right. I would just say to you, don't think so small. I say you recommend that we all get 20% raises for our work here. Actually, ice cream is more tangible. I think that's a good idea, man. 20% of zero. At least I'll be adding some calories with the ice cream.
Yeah, even with that example, it goes into the rabbit hole, right? Because someone will have an allergy or something, and it'll turn into
right.
So that's why, I think I get it. I get what you're saying, Terry. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what they were going with Yeah, so I'm fine with it if it makes sense to you. It does to me.
It makes sense to me. Yeah, makes
Okay,
sense.
perfect. And then the last thing I found, and I think this, I'm guessing the policy committee page I found, I forgot, I don't remember exactly which district it was,
Mhm.
but I think they put this in as a catch-all just in case. And what they put is other items is assigned by the school board or the school board chairman. Now, I think in their world, it's probably chairman. I think it's probably, president for us. So
Right.
I think that was just, their verbiage for it.
Mhm.
But I thought about that one and I said, well, it's interesting that point because the way we handle the organization of the BOE and how we handle the logistical coordination, for lack of a better term, is, you know, to me, kind of that bullet point is covered by the previous one, at least the way that we handle it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if maybe, in your experience, there was something that maybe that last bullet point would apply to that we should leave it. But I was thinking of kind of getting rid of it, but wanted
Yeah.
your input.
I, I I tend to agree with you because, um, you know, when it comes down to, if I'm what it comes down to is, you know, we often take action or decide something as a body, whether it's a 7-0 vote or a 4-3 vote. A majority dictates our actions, and so that's covered in the previous one. And, and I think we want to avoid, at least in my opinion, I think we want to avoid one person just because the person is the president dictating um, dictating policy directive. That's not to say the president can't make a policy suggestion, but in my mind, the president or any board member makes a policy suggestion, and then it goes through the process. And the process being, well, now that as I'm talking it out, I'm thinking it through. I tend to agree with you that we don't need that because again, anybody can make a policy suggestion, but it would go through I either the respective committee or you know directed to the administration to look into that. And I'm thinking this through as well. So let's say let's use your ice cream suggestion for a second. So the president says, ice cream for everybody at the board meeting. Uh, and, and, you know, four of us say, no, that's not a good idea. We won't waste any time on it, right?
Yeah.
But if five of us or four of us say, yeah, that's a good idea, but um, there are a whole bunch of other things to consider. Let's refer it to a committee, and then the committee can talk about, well, what about if somebody has an allergy? How are we going to pay for this? So forth and so on. So in both instances, it is kind of position neutral. Uh, Anybody can make the recommendation that we study something and have it be sent to a committee, but it doesn't. But everybody has the same equal opportunity, if you will, to make that suggestion.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like we're in agreement. We'll remove the last one.
Okay.
We'll leave it as just evaluate suggestions because to your point, we didn't pigeonhole who can make those suggestions, right? We left it open, so that should cover
Right.
it. Perfect. All
Right.
right. So then what we'll do here, Terry, is I'll take this and I'll kind of, I guess, combine it with what we already established for the governance one. And then maybe for the next meeting, I can have that drafted and we can, just review it as a whole. And then if we're in agreement at that point, we could move that forward.
Right. Okay.
Okay, perfect. All right. So the next thing, the new board member manual update. So, in the previous meeting, as I mentioned during our previous meeting minutes, we had, spent some significant time on updates to the document. I went ahead and I compiled all that into
Yeah.
a single document, and I had that inserted into our packet. So the entire BOE can, just get some eyes on it and start looking at it. It is a long document. So I don't anticipate we're going to discuss that at the next meeting, which is why I didn't raise it. Maybe, in a future meeting, I'll schedule something and put in the request for the BOE to talk about it. But the idea at this point is, the Governance and Policy Committee basically has, approved that version of the manual.
Right.
And once the BOE has some time to digest it and understand it, we'll have that discussion as a board and see if they have any comments or any changes they would like made. And then if the process moving forward is, once the board settles on what its pleasure is, we would then send that to our attorneys to have them, review and make sure that we're not doing anything that, would violate any kind of law or anything along those lines. And then once that's done, the last step in the process, in my mind, would be just to get that full manual in front of the BOE one more time. But in that case, it would be requesting its vote to approve it and to make it the actual new board member manual. Terry, does that jive with what you believe the process is at this point?
Yes, you froze a little bit on me there for a minute, but I got the gist of what you were saying, and yeah, I agree. I think the only thing I would add is just to go back to what you were saying about putting it on the agenda for the full board to have a discussion about. Obviously, we don't want to have that discussion, I think, at a regular meeting. This is more suitable for a work session. So obviously, we just had a work session. Perhaps you could schedule it for the first work session in April.
Okay, and that is on April 6th. Okay, let me put that in as the target.
Right, and the good thing is, because it was in the last packet, there will be several weeks. It'll give our colleagues a good amount of time to review this.
Yep, awesome. All right, so we will make that the target, and I will work on that. Okay. The next thing we had talked about during our last meeting was the board evaluation. Terry had suggested using an evaluation tool post meetings, and you were going to look at, updating that document. Since I didn't get to send out this agenda ahead of time, I'm not sure if you are prepared to present that this evening, or if you need some more time, or.
Yep. No, I took a look at it again, and you know what, Ashley, I think this document is good for two reasons. Well, a few reasons at least. This was something, as I think I said to you before, we had agreed to before previously. We had extended discussions about it. There are a good number of points here. I think all of the points are good. At this point, I think we could include it in the packet on this coming Friday, and again with the intent of our colleagues taking a look at it and coming back at the work session in April with some recommendations or suggestions. But I think this was on point.
Are you if I give you screen sharing, are you able to share it so I can see it?
You know what I'm going to do is, because I have it up on my laptop, I am going to send it to you right now.
Okay.
And I'll email it to you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Let's see if I can email this directly. It's going to come from my personal email since it's on my computer. And I'm sorry, I thought I'd shared this with you guys before. And if I did and you don't have it, don't worry about it. I should have sent it sooner. Okay, I just sent it to you.
Okay.
Let me know if you received it.
Yeah, not yet. I think it's just it's a little slow today.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? I'm going to just send it as an attachment and send it from my school board email as well.
Okay. Oh, I see what happened. It came in, but it went into spam.
Okay. Okay. But you got it now, right?
I got it. Let me just
Okay.
open it up.
Sure. Okay. As you can see, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. Do you mind
Actually,
if I share it out?
yeah, no, please do. Please do. I'm just gonna run and go upstairs and get my headset. I'll be right back. Give me 2 minutes, please.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
There you go. Good.
So I have up on the screen the observation sheet. You want to just go ahead and walk us through it real quickly?
Sure. So, so what happened here is the idea is to, after every meeting, board members would take some time to just evaluate how the meeting went. And they wouldn't have to, I think we discussed that we wouldn't require board members to do it, turn it in the night of that meeting, but they would send it back at some point prior to the next meeting, send it in to the clerk, and perhaps she could compile the aggregate score. And basically, it's like any evaluation tool. In this case, we use a 1 to 5 scale, and each board member would, rate the meeting, assign a value to each criteria, and then provide some comments, if applicable, about why they decided to give that particular score. And we came up with all of these different criteria. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, this was a combination of some ideas, some things that we thought were pertinent to us, as well as just some ideas that other boards use. This wasn't something, as I recall, this wasn't something that we created from scratch. This was a tool that other organizations or school boards had used, and we thought it was, with some customization, for our circumstance, that it was a good thing to use. And as I looked it over, I really couldn't decide to take anything out. Now, I think we have 20 different criteria, which is obviously long. So I would, you know, suggest our colleagues take a look and decide, you know, what part of this or which one of these they don't want to have. But again, I was good with all of them because obviously I'd been a part of the initial process, and we did this for about 2 or 3 meetings, and then there wasn't the appetite to continue it. So um, I think it's something that we should have continued with, and something to go back to. And by the way, it wasn't, as I recall, it was something that the governance committee came up with, because I know that Claudia Glazer played a big role in this. Antoinette was on the committee at the time, I believe, and the full board, we made a recommendation, and the full board, majority of the board, adopted it. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Looking at it, I tend to agree with you, Terry. I don't see much that I consider wouldn't be applicable. I guess the only thing in my mind is if it worked for 2 or 3 meetings, I would suspect, and obviously it's a suspicion because I wasn't part of the board at the time to see what the reasons were personally. My suspicion is that it is 20 questions, which it is a bit of a lot, especially for each meeting. Mm-hmm. So maybe to your point, maybe what we could do is, like you said, put it in the packet and get the board to look at it and think about maybe if we should whittle this down. Maybe there's some specific questions here that stand out as more applicable, and figure out what's the right balance, right, to get that feedback, right, on a more consistent basis.
Right.
Because I'm looking at these questions and the criteria. I mean, it makes sense. It's all stuff that I think absolutely can only help us, right? Mm-hmm. I just wonder if the length.
Yeah, because we want people to respond to it, and there's positive correlation to the longer the tool, the less of the response, and we obviously want to get people to respond. So yeah, and I don't want to, I don't think that. I think this is something that is a full board decision. And it may be as simple as asking them, let's keep it simple, asking, when we put it in the packet, asking them to, cross out which questions you don't want to see. And then, the ones that a majority of the board don't want, they get tossed. The ones that a majority stay in. And maybe that will get the process rolling. And we could have a discussion about some of them. I mean, some of them, we can, let's say question 18, I'm just throwing that out. 4 people say no to question 18. 18's on the chopping block. Is there any discussion? Perhaps because I'm assuming I feel strongly about 18. I say why I think it should stay. 4 board members still say nope, and then it's gone in the story.
Makes sense. Just making a quick note here. So what we'll say is we'll agree to put the tool into the next packet. We'll ask for the BOE's review and ask for feedback on what questions they would like to remove.
Right.
And then, like everything else, we'll just do, I guess, general consensus, and whichever ones are most voted out, we'll remove those. And then we can chat about them again and see if what's left is still sufficient to give us the flavor of the meeting, for lack of a better term, right?
Right.
And then we'll move on from there. So I think that's a great suggestion. We'll make that happen. Awesome.
Okay.
All right. The next thing was the board retreat. we previously agreed on team building as the topic that we were going to use for the retreat. I was supposed to get that done in February. It's in March. I haven't had it done yet. So I'm going to be committing myself to reaching out to the board president and doing that this week to keep that moving forward.
Well, we did have a busy February, so,
Yeah, it is. The snow didn't help either. So.
Right. Oh, and you are working, so, and you have a family, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so that was that. The next thing on the agenda was the BOE tone conversation we had. We previously agreed to make the recommendation to the board to ask our president to remind everyone of the board norms prior to each meeting. I just wanted to confirm I'm still good with that. I wanted to confirm, Terry, you're still good with that? And if so, I'll put that into the next packet.
I'm still good with that.
Okay, so I'm gonna put that to the next packet. And then the last thing we had was follow up from our last meeting's new business. During that section, there's a table here. During that section, Terry, you had revisited the board norms and asked if we would consider eliminating number 8 and then adjusting item number 9 to be a total of 5 minutes. And this is what I was talking about earlier during when we reviewed the minutes from the last meeting. It's, we had the conversation of, well, who's going to keep track of that and enforce it? And I had suggested, hey, we talk about it some more and see if, maybe at a later date and time, an epiphany would come to us. In my perspective, I still think that it's probably only going to be relying on one of two things. Either A, we all individually, kind of keep track on it on our own and try to be cognizant of it, which may or may not work, because sometimes when we get passionate about a specific topic, time has a funny way of not showing itself as the true time when we're in the middle of something, right?
Right.
So I can easily see us, missing on that one. The only other thing that I thought of for this one is, and I think you mentioned this in a previous meeting, Terry, and I think you had clarified for me that at the time, I think you said Trustee Carey had brought it up, the whole sergeant at arms idea. Maybe this would be applicable for someone that took on that role. Maybe they could be the ones to kind of, enforce the time limit. But again, what comes back to me in my mind is, if you have someone worried about timing, are they able to still focus on the topic at hand and, think about what they need to say and their opinions and their thought process? Because I know personally for me, when I start, I multitask all the time, but I found my best work doesn't come out when I multitask. That's just my opinion, at least.
Right.
And I would suspect there'd be a few others in that same similar situation. What are your thoughts?
So back me up. Did we talk about the board clerk basically working in and I'm going to use the word parliamentarian rather than sergeant at arms capacity, because it just sounds nicer. Did we talk about that? And I thought we did. And what were our conclusions on that particular question? Sure.
So if memory serves me, the only issue we had with that one was that we'll call it our parliamentarian in that function, being the district clerk, typically is not in our executive session meetings portion of the meeting, right? And my suspicion, at least I won't even say my suspicion, my experience has been usually the portions of the meeting that take on this passionate life of their own, where we have a lot of debate, typically are in the exec session portion of the meetings. So that's where we had kind of said, well, we don't think that'll apply only because of that. Technically speaking, the district clerk is a confidential board employee, but that is also, in my opinion, at least, it kind of puts that individual in maybe an uncomfortable position, right? To be in those kinds of things. And there may be some kind of reason technically that we can't do that. So I think that's kind of where we had left off when we kind of put that conversation to the side because of that.
Right. Yeah, thank you for the reminder. And yes, even though the clerk is a confidential employee, legal counsel has told us, there are limited times when the clerk is in the executive session, and it's very limited. So yeah, this would not be applicable. I mean, listen, I mean, is it as simple as maybe, I mean, because obviously the point is well taken that, you know, we're all concentrating and focusing on the discussion at hand and we don't have time to monitor a clock. But is it as simple as perhaps the president having a physical clock right there, one that that can be set for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, because even if we're in a room together, we can all hear the clock go off, or even if we are in a in a remote setting, you know, via this tool, we can hear in the background a clock going off, and that has the effect of, I think, a physical clock, you know, with a timer on it, has the effect, allows for everybody to concentrate, to keep their concentration on what it is the topic is about, and not be worried about looking at a screen, looking at the clock in the corner. And then once that thing goes off, that's it. It goes off, and we've all heard it, and that's that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. There's something to be said for sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones, right?
Yeah.
Because when you start getting complexity, that's when, you know, issues happen. No, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go with the idea being, you know, that we'll do some kind of either physical clock. We could even use the one that Ivy uses for public comment, or something along those lines when we're in person one day from now,
right?
Hopefully soon.
Right.
But in the interim, yeah, absolutely. We all have, you know, clock apps on our phones that have timers built in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can hear them. Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll put that together, and I'll put that into the next packet as well. Might as well, so it's all consistent, and get that in front of the rest of the BOE for some thought. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll combine all of these recommendations for analysis during that April meeting. And we can just have one discussion about all of them, and see how the board as a whole feels on each one of these, and see if we want to move forward, and in what way.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
Perfect. I'll clean that up a little bit after this. All right. That's all I had on the published agenda. And then the next thing was just the new business section. If there was anything you wanted to bring up.
Nope, I think we're good. I don't have anything else.
Okay. The only thing that I had thought about, and this is, I think, food for thought. I have seen that other school boards, depending on the school board, and I guess the culture of that district, and how they've seen it work. Some school boards have actually introduced a non-voting student member on some of their boards for limited pieces. Obviously, not during executive session or anything like that. But and I read about that, and I thought it was an intriguing idea, specifically because, you know, I think what better way to get feedback from our students than to actually have, you know, one or two of them in some portions of our meeting where appropriate, you know, hearing some of the things and getting some of their perspective, right? And the way I've understood it is those school boards that have done that, obviously they're a non-voting member, but they serve a great purpose. They serve as a bridge, right, between the school board, both to relay information back to the student body where they feel applicable, but also to relay information back to us, that may not, you know, our administration. I think every school district's administration does a great job, but, you know, there's certain pieces there that I think that the student body may not directly communicate with the administration on a routine basis, right? And that might be one way to bridge the gap, I think, a little bit. But that was just a thought I had from reading some articles, and I was curious to see what your thoughts are. Maybe you guys have tried that in the past or something along those lines.
Yes. So the discussion has come up in the past, and I don't know why it never happened, because I certainly think it's a good idea for all of the reasons that you mentioned. Others have expressed a similar position, but Ashley, I can't, for the life of me, remember why it didn't happen. So I would suggest that we bring it up again, and you know, yeah, and try to run with it, try to make it a part of what we do. Um, I think I recall that they said the student who is the student body president at the high school would also be the representative. We could do it with a committee of students if you like, if we like. Uh, but it's definitely something we should do. And I'm at the risk of sounding corny, I'm a big proponent of civics, and I was an Eagle Scout, or I am an Eagle Scout, and you know, community uh, community citizenship, or there's a merit badge called citizenship in the community, and it was the first merit badge I ever got on my way to becoming an Eagle Scout, and it was an eye-opening um, exercise for me to learn more about local government, because in school, I'm assuming your history was similar to mine. When we learn about whether it's social studies or history or whatever, it's usually these macro things that we do, but very rarely do we delve in at the high school level into local stuff. And I forget who said it, but all politics is local. And it's important for students to learn that early on. And certainly the student body president, he or she has already shown to their peers that they have an interest in governing, certainly for on their behalf. And part of that is also, you know, having a say or having a role in the administration of your education. So, I've said probably too much on it, but I agree with you. It's something we should do. And like I said, I know it's come up before. It's almost every time everybody on the board says it's a good idea, but then for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. So yeah, let's do it again. Let's try it again. Let's get it done.
Okay, sounds great. So I'll go ahead and I'll put that in as part of the packet as well. I'll put in just a high level idea. And then, we can have that conversation as the full board on that April 6th meeting, I think it was. And let's see if there's any reasons that we can come up with why we can't do it. But yeah, I think to your point, it would make sense that it would be the student body president or something along those lines, or someone that's expressed interest. Because the other thing is, we have 2 meetings a month on paper, but it is a big time commitment.
Right.
So you want someone that's definitely interested in doing it. You don't want to just thrust this on someone,
Right.
then you won't get the benefits.
Right. Although I think I do recall, now that you mentioned that, the time commitment, I do recall that the meeting that the student would attend would be limited to the regular meeting. So it would be that one monthly meeting. He or she would not necessarily come to the work session, although if we wanted to do that, we could. But I recall hearing that it would be just the regular meeting.
Got it. Okay. I'll put that in as a talking point in the packet and see
Sure.
over there. Okay, perfect. So I didn't have anything else. So if there's nothing else, then I would just like to say thank you for putting the time in today, for joining us in this Governance and Policy Committee meeting. We're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting now. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and second it.
No.
With that said, it sounds like we have a unanimous vote here. So we'll go ahead and adjourn.